And then the Shorter Catechism was for children and for new believers. And so immediately as he read all of this, he thought, wow, I want this for my kids.
So speaking of making up your own, though, you guys made up your own music to memorize the catechism. So tell us about that project.
Yeah. So my question for you is, how long do you want this story to be? Because like most things, those songs and even learning the catechism to begin with came out of a season of just upset and turmoil. And there was so much going on at the time. When my husband, he was struggling through some doctrinal issues, and he found a book called Rediscovering Catechism.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by VanDyken. And actually his family now lives in town around the corner from us. And they're wonderful, which is so funny to me. It's funny, especially because he didn't actually live here when he wrote that book. He lived somewhere else. So, but that book was a huge eye opener for my husband, who previously he had sat down, because we had real small children. He had sat down with a piece of paper. It was maybe a half sheet of paper. And he thought, okay, what are the doctrines that I want to teach my children? Mm-hmm. And he kind of, well, obviously the gospel, right? Like, we want to talk about creation. He just kind of went through the Bible and thought, how do I want to present this to my children? What do I want them to memorize? And he came up with, it was maybe a half sheet of paper, and it was good. There was nothing wrong with it. But so when he read Rediscovering Catechism, and he realized there are whole documents that theologians, pastors spent years building, and they actually put it into a form that I can give to my children. It's already done. Mm-hmm. And it took them 10 years. I mean, the Westminster Assembly, it was 400 years ago. And they took the best minds in England and even Scotland and pulled together to ask the question, what does the Bible teach? What is it that we need to be teaching our congregants? They were basically restructuring the Church of England. And there were some actual restructuring happening with their leadership, and trying to figure out how do we make this church as biblical as possible. And so they made the Westminster Confession, and it took them 10 years. And Scott thought, my husband Scott, he thought, well, who am I to go to, like, I came up with this little half sheet of paper, but they spent 10 years discussing this. And there are even stories you can read about each question, how long this took them, or what they were working with when they talked about this, and what the different discussions were, and because they took notes about their meetings. So that's really fascinating to look that up sometime. But anyway, so they came up with the Westminster Confession, which is basically just a summary of the Bible, and what's important, and what do we believe about baptism, and what is sanctification? What does that mean? What is justification? Mm-hmm. What is faith? And then they made the larger catechism, which is meant for teachers and pastors and preachers, and actually they're meant to kind of preach from it. And then the Shorter Catechism was for children and for new believers. And so immediately as he read all of this, he thought, wow, I want this for my kids. This is going to be so much better than what I was planning on giving them. And as we went through it, of course, there were doctrinal issues and things that we had to figure out. And I mean, the biblical texts are right there. It's just right there because they were so good about, they are not just trying to say, we believe this. They were saying, why is this scriptural? And so there are proof texts from the Bible about why is this phrased this way? Why do we believe this? And so there was a lot of, kind of back and forth. Actually, what we ended up doing was he taught a Sunday school every week. And it was a family Sunday school that we started. And so every week he would ask the kids a question, or actually it was whole families, because we were hungry for meat as well. And the way that the catechism is designed is you don't outgrow it. And so it's steak. It may not be steak with some frou-frou sauce on it. Like, it's not going to be the elaborate, real detailed doctrine that you're going to get from the assembly or from the Bible itself. But what you will end up with is a piece of meat, and it's good. It's good meat. It's steak. It's not yogurt, it's solid. And it's not milkshakes either.
Right.
It's tasty, and it's soul filling, and you don't outgrow it. And so the adults were getting just as much as the children were from this. And as we were memorizing, it had been, I mean, months into this, and I don't remember the exact timeline if we went back and like repeated it. I think we probably did. I think we got like third of the way through and thought, okay, more people are here, let's start over.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the first or maybe the second time through, we got to question 42, and we realized they are not retaining what we've already learned. And being a musician and even a sound engineer at different times, that's not his profession, but sometimes he does do video work, and he brings the sound engineering in. And he is also a musician, even though that's also not his occupation. He's a software developer. So he thought, well, I'll just write some songs. Why didn't we think of this earlier? This is such, and so he thought the only way we're going to continue moving through this thing. And if you actually look at 42, 43, 44, and you keep going up, the questions start to get longer in the middle. And as adults, we were having trouble even keeping pace with that. And obviously we have the books, and the goal was for the kids to memorize it. But, as adults, we also wanted to be able to rattle off the question to what is sanctification? I wanted a real clear way of communicating that to people and to my children and for myself. And so, so he sat down, and it was yet another season of turmoil, and we had just moved, and I was pregnant with my fifth, and I was so sick. And we were about to go on vacation, and I thought, why are we going on vacation? I don't know, but we need floaties. So I went to the store, I went to Target, and I took all the kids, and he was alone by himself, sick as a dog. We kept getting sick. We just couldn't stop. Like, we just were throwing up, and we had sore throats, and we had no idea why. It was for months after we moved. And so if you listen to that very first recording of him sitting down at the piano and trying to write, he wrote 5 songs in one sitting. It was 42 through whatever plus 5 is. I'm an artist. I don't need math. I'm kidding. I don't do math under pressure. So, anyway, he wrote the first 5, and if you listen to the recording, he goes, okay, well, this is question 42. He's coughing. He's so sick. And he wrote 5 songs, and they were great. They were catchy, and his goal was always, I want to match the words and come up with a rhythm that makes sense with these words. And also musically, he wanted it to make sense. So if it's a somber tone, what is sin? Or if it's, like murder, what is forbidden in, the 6th commandment? Like, that's somber. That's really sad. Murder is sad to God. And so, so it's minor, and maybe a little bit slower. Some of them are fun and the styles are all different. And because the goal was memorization.
Yeah.
So, and it was for our own family first. We really had no thought of that we were going to ever do anything with this. But the people in our Sunday school class also started learning them. He would just record it, kind of semi-produce it. It wasn't very professional at first. It was just, okay, every week we're just going to give you a new song to learn. And we got through, so he got through 42 to the very end, to 107, and then went back to the beginning and started at the beginning. So actually the beginning songs were very well produced to start out with, because he didn't have to, right. So producing songs takes practice. Yeah. You learn things along the way. And then he reproduced some earlier ones to match the quality of the early, the number 1 and number 2. The good thing is, people, when they listen to it, they start at number 1. So that's how we started. And then we did it in modern English because we wanted it to make it very accessible to the people in our Sunday school class. We probably would have gone I don't want to use the word stodgy, but maybe stodgy route and gone the Old English version, because we're nerdy like that, and we would have been totally fine with that. But we thought that we would lose people if we tried to do that. So we thought, well, PNR Publishing has this great modern English version, so let's use that. And it turned out to be very clear and understandable. And I mean, the Westminster Shorter Catechism is straight to the point. It has no frills. It's just straight doctrine. So, and actually he's working on a project to make songs from the Heidelberg.
Oh, cool.
Well. And the Heidelberg is a lot warmer than the Westminster, but it's also longer.
Yes, the answers are quite a bit longer.
Yeah. So that's been a process. It's actually challenged him musically, because he's taking the rhythms from the words. So instead of making the song and trying to fit the words in, he's trying to make the song based on the words. So with the Heidelberg, it's not as like, rhythmic. It's more, it's really interesting how the two different styles are different. But the Heidelberg is really more like melodic and kind of gentle. And it's more about like me and my relationship with the Lord versus like this heady, theological. But the heady theological has been so helpful for us as a family. I just cannot even tell you what a benefit the catechism has brought us. It's really, when we first got married, my husband kind of went on a journey to, if you think about loving the Lord with your whole heart, your soul, and your mind, and your strength. So sometimes it's 4, sometimes it's 3. We kind of thought about it as mind, will, and heart. And if we're talking about those 3 things, his heart was what he really was asking the Lord, how do I love you with my heart? And for me, it was, how do I love you with my mind? And I was asking the Lord, please boost my mind. It really needs help. You can tell I can't even add, 5 to 42 on the spot. So, but genuinely, I wanted to understand, why do we believe this? I know I believe this, but why? What is it in Scripture? Tell me the doctrine, help me understand it, and help me. And so it's just interesting how the Lord over the years is, he put me in charge of this homeschooling co-op. So I had to learn alongside with my children, which is just one of the beautiful things about homeschooling. And then on top of that, and then my husband was teaching the Westminster Shorter Catechism, using the scriptures in there to give the lessons, and then memorizing it. And because of that, we basically went through, the Christian doctrines of the faith. And so my mind, this was a huge blessing to my mind. My children will never ask the questions that I asked in the way that I asked them, it being a vague idea of what that means. What is justification? I don't know. They will grow up, Lord willing. I mean, some of ours are still pretty young, so we're still teaching them. But Lord willing, if we continue to build into them, they will understand these things that were so vague for me. I wouldn't have been able to put my finger on it before.
Yeah, when we've done catechism, I remember starting out when my oldest is now 20, and then I have an 18-year-old. And when, they were like 5 and 3, and we were starting with a catechism, we actually started with the very shortest catechism, which is like shorter than the Shorter Catechism.
Was it the Children's Catechism?
The Children's Catechism, yeah. And I remember just like repeating it and being like, I can't believe, I don't even know how many years am I going to be doing this, and like, oh, this is going to be like torture. But like by year 3 or kid 3, and we're repeating it over and over, and I was like, actually, this is me. I'm glad I get to keep doing this for however many more years.
Right, exactly.
We need
that review.
We do. And it's good, like just reviewing the basics and really meditating on them over and over is so wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. I was going through the app. So the fun thing about this project, and cut myself off, the fun thing about this project for us is that my husband, it's the 3 things that my husband always has to choose between coming together in one project. So it's the theology and programming, since he built an app, and the music. And he's always had to kind of flip between all those three. And it's just so fun to see all those three coming together. But as I was proofreading the app to make sure that this is, I'd look at the question and then I'd look at the app and then I would listen to make sure that the words are matching what he's saying. There were some discrepancies there where at one time he said "cause" instead of "because." And so we're, listening to those things. You said "because" here, or you said the word "the" here instead of, "and," or whatever. But I was just struck by how much gospel. It's basically just the gospel laid out. If you go start to finish, usually the catechism, you don't go start to finish. You don't see the big picture of it.
Yeah.
But I was blown away and I was humbled. And it was also such a blessing to my soul that day when I really needed the gospel that day. I needed to see it laid out. And it's absolutely beautiful what the Lord has done for us and the way that he made us to love him and to give us that relationship with him, and put us in families and now I'm just rambling. The gospel's beautiful.
It is, and having it to music, I think, is one way that we can meditate on it more. Like it adds beauty, but it also adds just time. You're spending time. I know in church we sing the Lord's Prayer, which makes it take longer, but in a way that's kind of part of the point. It's just spending time with those syllables and those words and really thinking about it.
Yeah, that's true. And the beauty aspect is a big part of it, wanting to make this well done and beautiful and to glorify what is glorious in it, what is beautiful in it. And obviously it gets stuck in your head. Yeah. So then you're thinking about it as time goes on, which is where that question, "What's in your head today, Stephen?" Asking that question, what are you meditating on over and over again? Yeah. Going round and round. Yeah. So the musical aspect has, for one, it made it so much easier to memorize. It's just fantastic. But also, like you said, I mean, we are made to worship, and singing is one of the predominant ways in scripture that we worship. We bring our worship to the Lord through song and music. And so it's a beautiful expression of that.
So, well, thank you so much, Hannah. Where can people go to find the catechism songs?
Yep. So it's WSC in Me, which is a play on words because it's in modern English, but it's also in me. WSCinme.com. And there's a bundle. You can buy the whole bundle, or you can buy one part of that at a time. And you could just get volume 1. The app is actually free. And so then the login is what gets you access to the songs. And the first 10 songs are free also. So if you just feel like trying it out. There's also so I know that a lot of homeschooling moms have asked us this question of, are the MP3s available? Because they want to put them on their MP3 players for their kids because they're not into having screen time for their kids, which I totally is great. So there is a button that you can press that says, "I want the MP3 downloads," and then directions about how to do that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Hannah.
All right, thank you.
Bye.